sbagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol!
Hello and welcome to this week's SP Weekly AC Milan podcast. I'm your host Samit Paul, and this week I'm joined by my good friend Jason Brown. Jace, how you doing?
I'm great, mate. I'm great.
Good man. Right, Jace, what a time to be alive. So it's been a crazy week. We've had the takeover go through. We've had a last gasp equaliser to break into Hearts, and there's transfer speculation galore. But first, let's cast our eye back to the game at the weekend. Before we get into the sort of intricacies of the game, I want to talk about individuals and just, the game itself. What an advert for Serie A, by the way.
Amazing.
We've spoken on many occasions now since the start of the season about how the style of Serie A football's changed. This whole stereotype of it being boring and defensive has gone out the window. It's no longer a debate for me, mate. Judging on big games between the big teams before this weekend and particularly this one, as a spectacle, it was brilliant, no?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've agreed with you in the past. I think I was pleasantly surprised by how open and the style of play in these games, like not just the Milan game on the weekend, previous games against Juve, even the Juve-Napoli game was a big game as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, great football, really entertaining, just kept you on the edge of your seat, not what you'd automatically associate with Italian football. But definitely, I think the Italian game has turned a corner, and I have to say the big games in the Premier League this season just haven't matched up.
Absolutely, no, couldn't agree more. We also had the whole early kickoff thing, which basically was to cater for sort of the global, i.e. the Chinese audience, in many people's opinion. Talking record-breaking TV figures, I think over 800 million.
Wow.
Obviously, both teams now owned by Chinese businessmen, so that kind of played a part in it. But if I was a neutral, obviously I wasn't, but if I was, I'd have thoroughly enjoyed that game. Like I said, end to end, from the off. Neither team was sitting back. They both went for the win, and it just played out to be a really, really good game. So on that front, absolutely brilliant. And then just in terms of how the game went itself, two really poor goals to concede from Milan's perspective for me. But to counter that,
I thought they were well worked though. To be fair, especially the second goals.
The second goal was definitely
quite well worked by Inter. But I see what you mean.
Definitely, no, I'd take that one. The second goal was nice from their perspective. The first one was just De Sciglio's mistake, I think, and then I personally thought Donnarumma could have probably done a bit better as well. But that's it's happened now. But definitely the first goal was quite disappointing. Great character to fight back though. I thought they stuck at it, put the pressure on. Obviously needed a bit of luck along the way, but got the two goals, got that last gasp equaliser, which was a thing of beauty. And I think it was a fair result on the reflection. I know Inter had their chances as well in the second half to put the game to bed, but I fully thought Milan deserved the point.
I agree. I think Milan should have gone ahead early on. Had probably the better share of the game. Della definitely needs to score when he's through, and to sort his feet out and at least get a shot off. But I thought. Milan were unlucky not to go ahead, but then when Inter did go ahead, I did feel like they could have had 3 or 4 maybe before Milan got back into it. But as soon as you got that first goal, you can kind of sense that this was back on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to get that 97th minute equaliser was just amazing.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. I think I've watched it on replay about 5 times. It was brilliant. But no, all good. Definitely to pick up on your point on Della. Again, the brightest spark that we had in many ways. Every time he picked up the ball, he looked like something was going to happen. Most dangerous outlet that we had on the pitch. So from that perspective, great performance. But as you said, still just being too wasteful in the final third. He got himself into really good positions, and then that composure, just that clinical edge, if you like, to put chances away, just wasn't there.
I agree, definitely.
So that's disappointing angle from it. But fingers crossed, moving forward, whether he stays or not, that's something he definitely needs to improve in his game. Romagnoli, I thought, was a standout performer. I think his reading of the game, his distribution, everything rolled into one. I thought he put in a really, really good performance. Was really pleased with him. Locatelli did great coming off the bench. I don't know if you saw that part where he had that amazing little bit of skill and then just decided to poleaxe the Inter midfielder.
I missed that.
Oh dear, it was funny to watch. But no, his impact was really good. Really impressed with that. Suso was really marked out the game in many ways. I think Inter made a point of sort of closing him down really quickly, limiting his influence on it. But then again,
I still felt like he did quite well though. I think when he did get the ball, he used it quite intelligently. I feel.
No, definitely, and that's kind of reflected in kind of him just being influential and getting us back into the game. So there was 2 very vital contributions from him. But then, Jace, it's a reoccurring theme, and I think you know what's coming. One man that just I can't help but single out for criticism every week is Carlos Bacca.
Yeah.
Snatched at a chance within the first minute that could have just changed the game entirely. Thereafter, just I don't even know where to start, Jace. Help me out.
He did seem a bit lost. I think that the way that Milan was set up and the attacking force going forward, he just looked out of place. Like he was, like, do you know what I mean? He's just off the pace with the rest of the team, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing with Bacca or if he's just not good enough. But he definitely, I can kind of see why Montella's gone with Bacca. A bit of experience in such a big game, and he's good at. He is known for nicking the odd goal here and there, but especially looking at the impact he made when he came on, I think if he'd had that kind of energy to begin with, along with the energy of the rest of the team, I think he could have potentially blown into away. I mean, if you had, you mentioned that chance early on. And we mentioned earlier before that Milan had a lot of the ball early on. Could have got the first goal, and it would have changed the whole outlook of the game. But
absolutely, mate. It's just difficult to know with Bacca now. I think system-wise, he just doesn't suit it.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest sort of thing that a lot of people in the media made was just a comparison with Icardi. I think Inter are set up very similarly in the sense they've got Perisic and Candreva on the wings, and you've got Icardi playing up front on his own.
Yeah.
And yet don't get me wrong, Bacca made some clever moves, clever runs across the line, and there were sort of elements to his game, his performance that you thought, okay, there's some positives there, but too far and few between. And
he didn't do enough for me.
Not at all.
I think I've mentioned this before. He kind of reminds me of Giroud in the sense that, he does pop up with important goals now and then, but a lot of the time he kind of slows the game down and doesn't do enough to warrant him, taking up a space on the pitch. Really, it sounds harsh, but no, I've said before, I feel he would suit coming on as a sub. Maybe when you need a goal, you can throw it into him. I know he's not the tallest guy, but he can make a nuisance of himself amongst defenders, and just getting that little flick on or being in that space you need him to be. I think that could work, but as an out and out, having him on for 90 minutes starting with him, I don't think it works.
No, not at all. I think I've kind of given him enough chances to this point, whereas now I've had enough. I think it's a case of drop him to the bench for the remaining games, and then it seems as if they're the priority. One of the biggest priorities this summer in the transfer market is to bring in a top striker. So, long term, I don't think he's going to hold that position, but in between now and the end of this season, I'd like to see him start on the bench, but again,
you can have Giroud, mate.
Cheers for that, mate.
It's all right.
We'll have to wait and see. But for me, Bacca, too frustrating. Doesn't get involved in play, build up play, link up play enough, and if he's not scoring, he's just complete liability for me.
That's the thing, is it? If he's not getting involved in link up play, then what is he there for?
Exactly. His hold up play is atrocious at times, Jace. I've some of his first touch, every time he picks up the ball in a deeper position with his back to goal, you just know he's not going anywhere and he'll run into trouble. And that obviously, he's proven his class, and in terms of goals, he's a great striker. But especially in this system we've got at Milan, I just don't think he's suited to it at all.
Yeah.
And the time has definitely come to give up.
Do you think it purely is the system? Because he wasn't this bad when he was in Spain. Do you know what I mean? He played in, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure he played up front by himself in Spain as well, didn't he?
I believe he did.
Yeah,
but I don't.
It worked from there. I don't know.
I personally can't say in terms of what Sevilla did as I said in their setup, but just based on what I've seen from him in a Milan shirt, particularly this season, it's just a case of I don't know if it's just a breakdown and there's no chemistry between them, or he gets very frustrated very quickly. He just seems a really unhappy man up front most of the time, and unfortunately, I think his time is certainly running out, and we'll have to wait and see whether or not he's still a Milan player next season. But time will tell, Jace. Time will tell. Yeah. Also, just in terms of the Inter result itself, really sweet in the sense that it was completely beautiful revenge from the first fixture earlier this season.
Yeah. Well, the 92nd minute, didn't they?
Exactly. Perisic bagged an equaliser in that game, and just to kind of turn the tables on them this time around was particularly sweet. So, again, it would have been nice to win, but the circumstances, grabbing that late dramatic equaliser was certainly pleasing. And then sort of a bonus on top of that, there was no real damage done in the sense that Lazio and Atalanta both drew, so didn't lose ground on them. And hopefully, I think in the circumstances, the way that they threw those 2 points away, it might be a damaging result for Inter, I think, in terms of their confidence going for the Europa League spot. So
definitely. I think if you're 2-0 up with 80-odd minutes gone and you end up drawing the game, I think it's a lot more damaging than if you're the team that's 2-0 down and gets the two goals, definitely. So we'll have to see if they can bounce back. But definitely, this is a massive boost for Milan, and hopefully they can carry on after, good result the week before, and then getting those 2 late goals. Hopefully they just march on.
100%. We shall see. Not long to go now. There's only a handful of games left this season, so pressure's certainly on all the teams involved in that race. But no, good stuff. Happy with that, and great game. Fingers crossed we can get 3 points this weekend and march on, as you say. But looking back a couple of days before the derby, we finally had the takeover completed, Jace. After weeks and weeks of talking about it on the podcast, whether it was going to happen, whether there were still question marks over the owner, was he legitimate, who's involved, this and that, people dropping out of the consortium. We finally got the takeover sorted. Everybody's signed. Everybody's taken their pictures outside of the Casa Milan, and everybody's got smiles on their faces. So everything seems to be pretty good at the moment. But new era, new start. We'll see how we get on. I think the biggest positive to sort of kick things off was the press conference with our new CEO, Marco Fossoni. He ticked a lot of boxes for me. I did a piece for ESPN earlier in the last week, stating my sort of 5 things on the to-do list, and those were support Montella, get his renewal sorted, sign the likes of Donnarumma, Suso, De Sciglio to renewals, promise a big summer of spending to sort of improve the squad as a whole, revitalise plans for a new stadium, and then obviously prove themselves to the supporters, not in the sense of just how ambitious are they, but as you know, I've moaned to you many a time now about how there's just not enough transparency there. What are their plans? How deep are their pockets? Are they trustworthy? So all those things I kind of really wanted addressed from the get-go, and I think I got it in many ways. He did speak about all of those things, and it all sounds pretty promising. I think I don't know from looking outside looking in whether everything seems to be a bit more legitimate, if you like. Is that the right word to use? But
I think it is. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's not knowing is always, the hardest part. I think I've gone through a similar sort of thing at Arsenal with the kind of the managerial situation. But it's because if you knew what was going on, you'd feel a lot better about things. And I think, him coming out, for Sony coming out and, like you say, making all this clear, it takes a lot of pressure off. And as a fan, I'm sure you would just waiting to know, especially with the young talent you've got in the squad that need new contracts, and the situation with the manager. I think those probably would have been the two biggest things to come out of this. But again, as well, always good appeasing to the fans when you promise summer spending, and talk of the stadium has been going on for a couple of years now, hasn't it? So for him to come out and address that as well, I think, like you say, he's kind of ticked all the boxes from a fan's perspective. But it's whether or not now they live up to those promises.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I mean, it all sounds great, but what they do now from this point onwards is what's really going to make the difference at Milan. So, got to back up these statements. Yeah, I mean, you did touch on the stadium. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe just over, where we were sort of on the path to. We got permission to build our new stadium. Everything seemed to be going well. Encountered some issues. Berlusconi pulled the plug, and the sort of focus went from new stadium to let's revitalise San Siro and stay there and improve stuff there, which was massively disappointing for me at the time. But if there are sort of plans for a new stadium further down the line now, then great. But
I mean, I remember seeing plans for the AC stadium.
Yeah.
And it might be a blessing in disguise, because if I remember correctly, I think that was only about 45,000 seater, the new one would have been.
Something like that. I'm not quite sure the number now, but so, it was definitely significantly less than San Siro anyway,
Maybe now you can go, 60, 65, even 70 maybe. Do you know what I mean? Oh, San Siro was like 80 odd, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Honestly don't know what the support for Milan is like over there, whether or not they can fill an 80,000 seater stadium. Although I guess they do fill San Siro right now, but I don't know if that's because it's, the San Siro.
I think a lot of it comes down to the game itself. I think Juve, whenever Juve are in town, Milan derbies, when the big teams rock up, Champions League nights and stuff like that, it's always a sellout. But apart from that, always get decent attendances, but it's never a sellout when Chievo, or no disrespect to them, but when the likes of Chievo, Pescara, or whatnot come to Milan, it's far from a sellout.
How do you feel about Milan moving, and then obviously the San Siro, or the history that AC have there? That would be, I'm guessing, Inter would just take that over, wouldn't they?
They've spoken in the past about having their own ambitions of getting a new stadium, but I don't know what they'd do. Whether they would just decide to stay at San Siro and take that, or continue, and who knows what will happen. But to kind of answer your question, I think I would be gutted, because anybody that's kind of visited the San Siro knows that it is an absolutely amazing sight when you're walking up to it from the outside, and then the atmosphere within it is like a cauldron. It really is a special stadium. But I kind of, that gets outweighed for me by the sort of financial and business aspects and the benefits of having your own stadium. So obviously this one's with the council, the way that it's, the rules are with Italian clubs and their grounds. We don't fully sort of get all the match day revenue that Juve now get, and the English clubs have got for years and years. So that's a massive drawback at the moment. So I think that kind of outweighs any sort of sentiment and sort of feeling that I have towards staying at San Siro, which is it's a shame to see it potentially move one day, but I think it's a necessary step that the club have to take eventually. But
definitely. I see what you're saying.
So fingers crossed. I think that's sort of further down the line. I think that's probably going to be 3-4 years maybe before they even talk about it again. I don't know, but at least he kind of mentioned it, which was positive. But as you mentioned a minute ago, I think everything kicks off with the renewals. It's all about getting the house in order first for me between now and the end of the season, sort of proving themselves, setting their stalls out, and then sort of leading on into a big summer of spending. It's a good sign, but it's also a worrying one at the same time, that the likes of Donnarumma through Raiola mostly, Suso, Montella, the sort of consensus has been that everyone wants to speak to the new ownership before signing their renewal, just to get an idea of who's coming in, what their plans are for the future, and where they fit into those plans. But I see this as sort of, as I just said a second ago, kind of the first real test of the new owners now to prove themselves to the supporters. Get Donnarumma signed to a new contract, get Suso renewed, get Montella in place for years, and give him the backing that he needs to build his own squad now. This really is the kind of, even before we get to the summer transfer window, this is the first real test, I think.
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, you mentioned it there. If these players don't sign, then that's sending out a message that obviously the conversations they had with the new ownership didn't work well, and that these new owners, the ambitions don't match the ambitions of the player. And as a fan, that's not what you want to hear, is it?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No. So fingers crossed that we get the Donnarumma and Suso situation sorted. Montella, obviously, as well. But that will be first port of call. And then an interesting question I had for you, Jace. So, again, it was quite concerning that on the day that Yonghong Li confirmed his takeover of the club, that Gazzetta dello Sport ran with a story questioning his sort of how deep his pockets were, essentially. How wealthy is he really, and kind of feeling that a lot of people in China don't really know who he is compared to the Inter owners, who are more famous and well known. On one hand, obviously, for me, that sparks out as a really concerning thing. Just to, on the day that we're getting bought out, I don't really want to be hearing how rich is the new guy coming in, and nobody really knows who he is and what he deals with and whatnot.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, I also asked the question: well, could that, as long as everything's legitimate and he's got money to spend and we're all good on that front, could this not work in favour of Milan in the sense that we don't actually know how deep his pockets are? So, again, obviously everyone thinks, new Chinese owner, money to spend, great. But we don't know whether, we're looking at masses and masses of amount of money being spent this summer, which kind of avoids a scenario where price tags go up.
Yeah. I think, that's a great point, actually. I mean, the fact that he was able to buy the club suggests that he's obviously a wealthy man. Do you know what I mean? He found the money somehow. And like you say, if his wealth was out there, similar to what happened at Man City, Sheikh Mansour took over, everyone knew this guy was a billionaire. Players with a year left on their contract were being sold to City for like 30 million. And you're thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's only because people know that this guy's a billionaire. Yeah. I think you raise a great point. I didn't actually think of that until you said it, but that could be intentional. The fact that he's kept that quiet just so that Milan don't get extorted in the transfer market.
I mean, I'd like to think so. I think that would be a great way to play it. Again, I'm kind of concerned that that's not really the reason why, but if it is and things go well this summer in terms of spending, then I think he's done well to kind of keep that under wraps. But that is a question that will be answered in the coming months, I'm sure. But just a few more takeaways from the press conference then. Fossoni kind of promised innovative new ways of tapping into the Chinese market, which he believes that can double Milan's revenue. He also spoke about a meeting with UEFA being postponed over the financial fair play, and he'll present a 3-year plan to them about it, and just to kind of give them an idea of where the club is heading under this new ownership. And then obviously, Jace, I think the thing that he, the club and everyone connected is striving for at this point is a return to the Champions League. I think it was mentioned countless times from everyone involved in that press conference, Champions League, Champions League, Champions League. It's a bit difficult in the sense that, I know you've kind of got your thoughts this year about Arsenal, whether it be a positive thing for you to drop out of that top 4, but Champions League is pretty much the holy grail, isn't it? I think everyone just wants to be involved in that competition and build from there with the money and all the other benefits that come with it.
Definitely. I mean, a club like Milan as well, the history that you guys have with that competition, I think it's vital that you get back there. Whether that's, getting into Europa League this year and then potentially winning that competition and hopefully next year finishing in it's top 3, isn't it, in Italy?
It is for this year, and then we get an extra spot as of the 2018-2019 campaign. So 3 for now, and then back to 4 sooner rather than later.
So you'd like to think with the new ownership that you should be targeting, by that season. should be targeting Champions League most definitely.
Yep, absolutely. I think long-term goal, obviously, to take the club back to being a top 5, whatever, in the Europe. But short-term wise, in this next 2 years, I'd say is Champions League is the aim for them. So fingers crossed. Europa League this season would be lovely. We'll see. Yeah. We'll build from there. But all good.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good to get back into Europe. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Could be AC Arsenal final next season.
I mean, we should definitely be going to that, Jace, if that happens. But I mean, I've seen reaction and stuff on Twitter about people wanting to sort of, to use the American term, tank and just sort of drop out of that top 5, top 6 to avoid going into the Europa League. I'm not for that at all. Like,
makes no sense to me.
I understand the reservations about the Europa League as a competition, and I understand that, but for me, it's been 3 years now since Milan were in the Champions League. I desperately want them back in European competition, no matter what it is. So I think it'd be good for them to get some European football back at San Siro next season. So.
Yeah, I mean, part of me can see that side from an AC Milan perspective. You know, you've got such a rich history in the Champions League. You've got these new owners who are promising big spending. So it might be. I can see why people will think it was better just to have no European football, just concentrate on the league next season. But you know, from an Arsenal perspective, let's say we're not promised a new manager. We're not promised, a big summer spending spree. If we don't get into Europe, we don't have a rich history in the Champions League in terms of getting far in competition. We haven't even won a European trophy, so I'll take any European football, to be fair. But I can see how some people would look at Milan and think, they're too good for Europa League. But I think, like you say, when you haven't had it for 3 years, you just want to get back into Europe, don't you?
Exactly. That's my feeling anyway. But everyone's got their opinion, so it's all good. But for me, Europa League's a must next season. So fingers crossed we get that target met. But we'll have to wait and see. Jace, I want to switch the attention over to transfer targets. It's normally my favourite part, considering the names being linked with Milan at the moment. So
we need a Jack here with his list.
We'll try and get him on to give us an insight on Twitter tomorrow. But one man I want to really talk to you about and focus on in particular is someone you know very well, of course, from his Arsenal days in particular.
Yeah, I know. Someone I once loved.
Yeah, just Cesc Fabregas, obviously we're talking about. Again, it's been going on for months now, and there's talk of agreements, personal terms being agreed back in January, and reports of a 25 million euro fee for his transfer fee, and then big money contract on the table. But I want to just focus in on him as a player. Is he someone that strikes you as the perfect kind of player to come in and kickstart this, revolution, if you like, at Milan? Has he got the experience, leadership, quality? Does he tick all those boxes for you to say, do you know what, that'd be an absolutely brilliant sort of first, second, third, whatever signing for Milan this summer?
Yeah, well, he's definitely got the leadership qualities. He was Arsenal captain from a very young age, and like the time he carried us through in some of our not so good times. He was our standout player. Then obviously he went to Barcelona, where he won a lot of football games, a lot of trophies there. Yeah. Didn't work for him because he was behind the pecking order of some of the greatest midfielders ever to play the game, which is no fault of his. I think personally he went there a bit too soon. But come back to Chelsea, integral part in them winning the league. Him and Costa obviously coming in and totally revitalising that Chelsea team. But then he's kind of fallen away this season under Conte, and that's the only issue there for me. I think what kind of mindset would he be in, having been an important part of the Chelsea team, to now being a bit part there? Will he be able to step in to AC Milan and suddenly revitalise the form that he had a few seasons ago at Chelsea? But in terms of what we've seen him capable of doing, I think if he can replicate that in Milan, I think he'll be a great signing.
Yeah, I mean, my thing about it is that I think him stepping into that sort of role with the youngsters around him and kind of giving that really crucial, pivotal centre midfield sort of position in the team, I almost think that it would get the best out of him. And I think it would be a really, really sensible signing. And again, I wouldn't say he's like at top of my list. He wouldn't be one of my most favoured transfer signings this summer, but I can certainly see the sense in it. And
Yeah,
based on the strength and how many times we've heard reports about, whether or not he's coming or not, I think it almost feels as though we're at a point now where it's going to happen. I think there's plenty of targets out there, but for where we are at the moment and what we need, I think it would be a very good
yeah.
addition.
Who would you want for centre midfield then? As if not Fabregas, for AC.
If I'm playing Football Manager at this point, I'd probably say, again, I think I've mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, Verratti would still be my number one of all options. It has to be him.
Italian as well. So.
Exactly. I think he fits everything that we're trying to do at Milan, and just quality alone, I think he's a top class player. So I'd love to see him there, but I really doubt that's going to happen. So being more realistic, it kind of comes down to sort of more continuing what Montella's doing at the moment with this young sort of Italian team. One name we have been linked with is Lorenzo Pellegrini at Sassuolo. I'm guessing you probably haven't seen much of him, but don't blame you. But I think he'd be a really good size. He's had a really good season this year, and Roma have got like a buyback clause in his contract with Sassuolo, so I think they're going to exercise. But I'd like to see him come in, another young sort of Italian player that can grow with the team and improve, and just fits the mould. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. I think De Rossi's been one name linked with us because of his expiring contract at Roma. He's obviously worked with Montella previously. I think he'd bring a wealth of experience and whatnot to the team. But
would he be able to play week in, week out though?
That's the reservation at this point in his career. Has he got the legs to kind of not only sort of be that voice in the dressing room, but also on the pitch week in, week out, like you say. I think that would be the biggest reservation with him. But I mean, I think Pellegrini for me would be a great signing. Kovacic is another one that springs to mind. Whether we can take advantage of him sort of not being at the in the starting lineup at Real Madrid. I think he'd be a clever sort of addition to the team. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anybody that you can think of that I'm missing, or what kind of midfield targets are we looking at? I think, again, like I said, Fabregas seems to be the name that keeps cropping up every week. But
I mean, one that came to mind was talk of there being Pep completely gutting his City team. If David Silva was available, I think he would be a great signing for Milan.
Definitely, yeah.
But other than that, I mean, that's speculating. I don't know if Pep plans to get rid of a player like Silva, but I mean, if he was available, he would probably pick Fabregas for me. Although I love Fabregas, I think he's a great player. He's got no loyalty, but yeah, he's a great player. But I think Silva, but Verratti probably, out of the names that we've just gone through, I can see Verratti does make a lot of sense. He is a great player. I know too well. Arsenal played. We played PSG a few times now. I've seen PSG play Chelsea as well, and he's always kind of stood out to me as a great player. But
I think, I mean, there's so many names in the hat at this point. We're just playing a guessing game as to who it's going to be, but can only go by the strength of speculation. And I think if we're looking at a more realistic option, then Fabregas is the man. But
wouldn't be a bad signing at all. I think could do really well.
We'll have to wait and see how that develops. One man that seems to be in the midst of a battle between our two teams at the moment off the pitch is Sead Kolasinac. I haven't seen much of him, to be honest, Jace. I'm not going to lie. Schalke.
Nor have I, to be honest.
Heard a lot of good things about him, and obviously he's on a free transfer with his contract expiring this summer. From your perspective, I mean, I know Arsenal needs a left back if you need someone to replace Monreal in the long term, but
yeah.
He must be decent, I guess. I think of Juve have been linked with him, and a couple of other teams around Europe have been linked with him, so he must be a decent player.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that we've signed him. I don't know if that's true, but I heard that it's been agreed. But
I think his dad came out this week and said that there is no definite signed agreement with Arsenal. He's going to make a decision next week, but that's not ruling Arsenal out. He's still saying it's between Milan and Arsenal as to his next team.
Oh, could get tense. No, but yeah,
promise not to fall out of me, Jace.
Yeah, I like I say, I haven't seen much of him, but like he does have a bit of a tug of war going on for him, so he must be half decent. I mean, I heard Everton as well.
Yeah,
they thought they'd signed him, and then Arsenal were in, then Milan, and then Juve. So yeah, he must be decent. Arsenal are in desperate need of a left back, but we'll get more into that on tomorrow night's pod. But yeah, I think I don't know what I can say. Like, we're kind of speculating he must be good if managers like Wenger, Allegri, Koeman are all after him. He must be decent.
Yeah.
I just can't figure out why Schalke haven't tied him down.
Yeah, no, definitely. Seems a strange one to me, but I think he's obviously pushing for a move and he'll get it. But it's just a case of who manages to snap him up. We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I mean, sort of wrap things up from a transfer target perspective. I think the areas that need strengthening are pretty obvious. We need a central defensive partner for Romagnoli, midfielder, creative one at that. I think we're definitely, when Bonaventura's missing, we're definitely lacking someone in the midfield to sort of fill that role, and then someone to replace my good friend Baka, which would be lovely. But
who would be top of your list for centre forward?
It's almost a very similar sort of scenario to what we were talking about with the midfield. Like, my top choice, without a shadow of a doubt, would be Belotti.
Yeah,
I'm completely sold on him, and I believe in this team, with the players around him, he'd be an absolutely brilliant signing. So, first choice without a doubt, Belotti. Outside of that, again, I'll throw three names at you that have been linked. Whether or not they're realistic or not is up for debate. Aubameyang obviously is one. A return to Milan, which would be good. Obviously, if it'd be a massive statement, but I just don't quite know whether he'd be that keen on it. Someone like Benzema's another option that I've heard. And one that's kind of become a bit stronger in the last day or two is Morata.
Yeah.
And I think he'd be a great addition. But again, I think Chelsea are keen on him. So if it's a choice between Chelsea and Milan, at the stage that the two clubs are at the moment, I think we both know where he'd probably go. So yeah, in short, Belotti.
Yeah, I think Belotti would be a great signing.
Definitely.
Great signing. Can't argue with that at all. But, Benzema would be great as well. I think someone of his ability and his physicality as well would do great in the Italian league.
Absolutely. Just have to wait and see what direction the club go. But I think our first signing is all but done. We spoke about him last week, Matteo Masaccio from Villarreal. I believe talked today that there's a €50 million deal done. So he most probably will be the first signing of the new era, which is...
That's a good statement of intent, that, It's good to get the deals in early, though. I still think,
Definitely, yep. No, it's a good start. Again, no confirmation as of yet, official confirmation from the club, but based on what I'm hearing, it seems like it's all but done. So it's a good start. But yeah, Jace, all good. Obviously, I think we'll have to wait till the summer to kind of see real deals being done and who's going to come. But promises to be a fun couple of months listening to all the speculation flying around. We'll have to see if any other Arsenal players crop up. It'll be quite interesting for us to discuss.
Yeah.
But
you can take Monreal and give us Kolasinac.
I think we're all right, mate. We're all right. Dear. Good stuff. There's one other person I wanted to discuss with you is Della, but I mean, we've kind of spoken about him earlier, and I think it's becoming more and more clear that Barcelona are probably going to exercise that clause in the deal with Everton, and It's a bit of a mixed bag for me. I think, I asked the question, like, has he done enough to kind of warrant being signed on a permanent basis? I think he has. I think he's been a really, really good addition to the team. And we've seen flashes of just how good he can be. But as you've pointed out previously, and again, based on the weekend's performance, there's still something missing in his game. And it makes me ask the question, I know he's still young and definitely got plenty of time to improve, but are there better options out there, or do you think the way that he's kind of come on under Montella that Milan should be prioritising him this summer?
I would definitely prioritise della. I think, like you say, he's been there. He knows Montella. Montella seems to have a lot of faith in him, and he has shown flashes of greatness, but just needs that little bit of fine tuning. I think he'll get that under Montella. A full season there, a pre-season with him as well. I think you'd start to see like improvement in those areas where he needs to improve. So it'd be a shame for him to go back to Barca and sit on the bench there. But I think I mentioned last week if Milan could even get a season long loan on him next year,
yep,
and say with an option to buy, I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, I echo those thoughts completely. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think it is a disappointing aspect that he hasn't got more goals, more assists at this point. Because he's obviously he's made a massive impact, but I can only see him getting better and better. As you said, that relationship with Montella seems to be working wonders for him personally as well. So all positive signs. And if there is a deal to be done with Barca, whether, like I said, is a loan initially or a transfer this summer, I think he needs to be up there with the top targets, which certainly be a very good signing. So yeah, fingers crossed on that one as well. Fast forward into this weekend, Jace, we've got Milan Empoli. I'm fully expecting a Milan win. Empoli struggling at the bottom of the table and starved of any real sort of top players. I can't see them posing too much of a threat in that sense. I do see them coming out to frustrate Milan, but I'm backing the boys to get 3 points. And I think we've spoken about it before, but these are the kind of games where Suso kind of comes to the fore for me, and I think him and della will be absolutely key in this one. Milan are going to be, dominant in terms of possession, but it's going to be down to those kind of creative players to unlock those stubborn defences.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, when teams just want to sit back, so when you need your creative players to just have that little extra bit of spark and find that space and just exploit it and get your team off to a great start. I think if you get an early goal, that completely destroys in the opposition's game plan to frustrate you, and then space starts to open up because they have to come out, and then that's it. You should have the game then. But I think the longer it goes on, and they're able to frustrate you, and it might get a little bit more difficult. But I can't see anything other than a Milan win, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that as well. I think we saw that in the Palermo win. Kind of get that first goal, opens things up, and you can kind of go from there, and the quality comes through. So the start is absolutely crucial, and I know that's something that you've bemoaned at Arsenal a lot this season. The slow starts are really proven costly. So
yeah,
this is definitely one of those games, and I'd like to see Locatelli start, I think, as well. Just on a side note, Sosa's obviously taken that spot in the central midfield in the last couple of weeks, and for all the good things that he's done, I still don't see what he offers to the team that Locatelli can't. And given the sort of room for development and improvement that he's got, I think he needs to be playing in these type of games to really cement himself in this team. So fingers crossed we get a Locatelli start this weekend as well. And then just looking at the rivals, we've got Fiorentina versus Inter, which is another opportunity for Inter to kind of drop points. I think it's a tough game, and I hope again Fiorentina are not too far behind as well. So whether they cancel each other out, whether it's a Fiorentina win, I don't mind as long as Inter don't win. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Atalanta at home to Bologna. Fully expect them to get 3 points, so that's going to be a setback. And the same applies to Lazio Palermo. You can see Lazio getting 3 points at home against them as well. So Europa League race is heating up, Jace. I don't think there's going to be much sort of change between those 3 or 4 teams come this weekend?
Yeah, I can't see it either. I mean, Palermo, Lazio, like you say, at home, Lazio should win, but we saw what happened. They can frustrate Lazio as well, but I doubt it. Atalanta seem to be on a great run. I know they drew their last game, but prior to that, they've been doing great. So you fully expect them to beat Bologna at home. And yeah, just to echo your points, just looking at that Fiorentina Inter, a draw would be perfect, really. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And if Milan go and get 3 points, then it's just really trying to hunt down Atalanta and keep Inter away, really.
Absolutely, mate. We shall see what happens this weekend, but this is definitely one of those weekends where we need to kind of take advantage of the fixtures and make sure we do our part if nothing else goes to plan. So
yeah,
that's.
Are you all playing at the same time, or?
I'm not too sure. I think we're probably stretched over the weekend. I'd imagine Fiorentina Inter's probably one of the evening games. Yes, Saturday night they're playing. Yeah. Atalanta play on Saturday as well, and then us and Lazio play at the same time on Sunday. So we can kind of react to what Atalanta do, I guess, and Fiorentina Inter. So interesting weekend ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
Good man. Just before we get in the Twitter questions and wrap things up Milan-wise, I just want to have a quick chat about Barcelona-Juve tomorrow night, just Italian representation. Spoke about it last week and kind of gave our predictions, and I think we all went for Juve to sort of advance. But has your opinion changed at all, Jace? I think Iniesta and a lot of the Barcelona boys have been talking, saying that, all we've got to do is attack and we just got to see how Juve react and take it from there. But I personally can't see Juve capitulating and giving this one up. But what do you think?
No, I stand by my point. I think Juve are definitely going through. I think, the Paris Saint-Germain result has kind of skewed Barcelona players' opinions, and they think if they just go out and do what they did, Juve are just going to fall like PSG did. But nah, I don't see it at all.
Nah, definitely not.
Don't see it at all.
Completely different animal. I think we're. It will be interesting. I've got to admit, if Barcelona do get an early-ish goal, it kind of changes it, and then, if there's a bit of nerves creep in and stuff, then.
Well, I mean, if they plan on attacking, we saw with Paris Saint-Germain, they should have scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
True. Really, the space that they're creating, I think Juve will be a lot more clinical and they'll be better defensively as well. So I just can't see it.
No, I have to agree. Juve to go through for me as well. So we'll keep an eye on that one tomorrow night. And yeah, just to finish off then with Twitter questions, I want to give a shout out to regular listener Stefano. He's back with a couple of questions for us this week. So cheers for listening. And he asks, his first question is, well, we kind of answered it, but we'll go for it. Who do you believe is a realistic replacement for Bacca? Should it be Lapadula or someone new? In terms of Lapadula, I think short-term wise, absolutely. I think for the next games between now and the end of the season, I think he should be the replacement. Long-term, I can't see it happening. I think he'd be a good squad player, someone to sort of contribute a handful of goals and sort of give that lift off the bench. I think that's his perfect role for us. But yeah, I mean, again, realistic playing that sort of game. Whether Belotti is realistic or not, probably not. But he is still my number one target. And beyond that, I think you are looking at a sort of a Morata, someone that level that's not peaked, not kind of proven themselves at a top level on a consistent basis. I think though that's probably the best way to go. So someone like that for me. Do you agree with that, Jace, or do you think there's another name that's probably most realistic for you?
I think at the minute, I definitely agree. I think, looking at as we get towards the end of the season and the kind of the transfer roundabout sort of starts going when players start moving and other players become freed up, I guess you can kind of reevaluate. But at the minute, in terms of players who realistically would move, I think those names we just pulled out are probably the best ones.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so too. And then part 2 of his question, again, we've kind of discussed it, but there's an interesting sort of side part to it. Is Fabregas a good target for Milan, and does he elevate them into the Champions League fight next year? We've obviously spoken about whether or not he's a good target, but is he a player capable of bridging that gap for you, taking a team that's fighting sort of for those 4th, 5th, 6th spots? Does his sort of injection of quality take Milan into the top 3 for you?
I think it depends on who replaces Bacca, to be honest. Fabregas is great in the midfield, creatively at providing goals for strikers. He's probably one of the best, I think, at doing that. We talked about Silva. The thing about Silva is he's more of like a pre-assist guy. He'll be the guy to get the ball and give it to the guy who's going to provide the assist. Fabregas can do it all. He can mix up in the midfield. He gets a lot of assists. He chips in with goals as well. So he could do in that sense if you get a good striker in to play with him. He'll definitely be providing chances, and it's whether or not someone's there to put them away. But definitely if someone's there to score the goals, Fabregas will be making them. So he could elevate Milan up into those Champions League spots.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think we've seen that partnership he struck up with Costa this season.
Yeah.
It's brilliant link-up play. Those, all his qualities come to the fore in that case. And yeah, I think he is that kind of player. Again, like you mentioned earlier, there is a sort of question mark as to whether has he still got it left in him to kind of start a new project elsewhere and be a leading figure for a team. That'll only be answered in time if he does join, but I think he's got the all-round quality, to come in and make a real difference to Milan. So, yeah, I think the answer in short is probably yes. I think he can, depending on, like you said, the additions around him. Also, very very crucial. Abhishek asked, should we aim to sign Bernardeschi, Belotti, or Berardi? Jace, I don't think you need a second guess as to who I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Again, we should aim for Belotti, in my opinion. But if we can't get him, those other 2 aren't bad at all. So I'd be more than happy to take one of those 3. But yeah, Belotti's still the main man. A kind of point that I made on Twitter actually today, just coming to think of it from this question, I'm actually content with any signing Milan make this summer, as long as it comes with Montella's approval. Yeah. I think we've seen enough this season to suggest that he knows what he's doing. He's building the right way. He knows specific players for roles that he needs filling. If he says someone's good enough for him, then I'm just more than happy to go along with it.
That's a good shout. It's a good shout. I mean, it seems to have worked for him so far, getting players who you wouldn't necessarily consider to be, your grade A signings, but he knows what he wants. He knows what's needed in his team, and he knows the qualities that he's looking for in players. So I would agree with that, definitely.
Good stuff. And the last question is from @IamRockMusic. He wants to know any reconsideration to have Paolo Maldini involved in the management team. If you're asking for my personal sort of opinion on it, I'd absolutely love to have someone like Maldini back at the club. I think him sort of coming back and playing a really important role, again, all depends on what role he would have. I don't think he's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to come in and have like a unimportant position, and it's going to have to be a prominent one. So, but just to have a legend around, whether it's sort of impacting on the squads, whether it's kind of helping bring back the sort of culture and stuff that he helped develop as a player, I think it can only be positive. And I think for Sona, he didn't mention Maldini. He kind of mentioned a couple of other names in his press conference. Maldini wasn't one of those, but I think there's a sort of openness to bring back in former players. But I think you're going through a similar thing in that sense, aren't you, Jace? Overmars being linked with sporting director role and stuff.
Yeah.
I personally believe it's a really positive thing to have those guys come back. What do you reckon?
No, I agree, definitely. I mean, I'm really keen on getting Overmars in, or even Lehmann, who currently is I think he does that role for a German club, or any of the players. I mean, we've had Henry as a coach. There's talk of Tony Adams coming back.
I'm not sure
to
that's
coach.
a good idea, Jace.
Yeah, I know his training sessions.
Yeah.
But yeah, he took that job over in Spain. But we had Keown as well as our defensive coach, and while he was there, our defense was pretty good. And since he's left, it's rubbish again. So I think, especially a legend like Maldini and players from the past who have won things with that team, I think it's always positive. We see Chelsea about to appoint Lampard as well to a position, so I think it makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Absolutely. So fingers crossed he does come back. He's been pretty vocal in his point that he wants to know more about the ownership and stuff. So we'll have to wait and see again. That's another question mark, but time will tell. That's it for us, Jace. I think that's a wrap this week, unless you had any other questions or any comments that you'd like to bring up.
No, I think we've covered a lot. Obviously, takeover has happened. So happy days.
Finally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to this weekend. Fingers crossed, 3 points and another step towards Europa League qualification, and more sort of speculation to enjoy. And Jack will be back next week to give me some more interesting facts and figures, I'm sure. But
yeah,
we'll wait and see until then. But Jace, back next week. But until then, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye to the people.